Hello, fellow detectives. Welcome to Unlocked, the official podcast for all things Nancy Drew by Her Interactive. I am your host, Tammy Tuckey, and this week we welcome voiceover artist Gabriel Wolf to the show. Welcome, Gabriel.
Oh, thank you. I was waiting for my cue, and I was figuring that was it. So
you got it.
Yes,
perfect cue.
Yeah, no, it was the monkey bread that brought me here.
For listeners who don't know, we're just talking about monkey bread and how delicious it is. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that it's a godsend thing, and I love it. So if you don't know what it is, go ahead and Google it. It's delicious. If you love cinnamon and sweet treats, you got to get one. But Gabriel hasn't had one before, which is shocking to me. They should have them in Sweden, right?
So, no, they don't have it. They should import it, definitely. I mean, they have the whole Reese's thing and what is it? Skippy peanut butter. We've got all that over here now, but not monkey bread.
Is there something in Sweden like that they have that they don't have here in the United States or the UK that's like delicious?
Oh, it has to be delicious. Okay. It's difficult to say because no disrespect to their palates, Swedish menus tend to be very bland. They don't like heavy flavors from the sounds of it, from being here anyway. And the one thing I do miss from England that they don't seem to have over here, they don't have gravy, heavy meat flavored gravies that are more stock based. They don't have that here. Most of the gravies over here are cream based.
Well, it sounds like you're kind of being almost like a tour guide basically of Sweden for me, because I've never been there. Really don't know too much about it. Which is interesting because your character that a lot of people know you for the Nancy Drew series is Dylan Carter. And Dylan Carter appears in Tomb of the Lost Queen, which I love because I love Egypt. I love the stories behind it. I always did when I was a kid. So when the game came out, I was like, yes, this is great. But Dylan Carter is known to be, I will say, quote unquote, a tour guide. And I'm using my fingers to kind of say tour guide because who knows? He seems to be a charismatic individual that assumes that he's a tour guide and is kind of thrown into this story, which I find interesting. So when you heard about the character, what information did they give you about him? Pretty much that, or what else did they, let you know of his backstory?
Well, I was sent through a sheet of characters that I could audition for. One of them was Dylan, obviously. The other one was the Egyptian chap, the miserable sod that's down in the catacombs. And then I had the Dylan Carter one, and they just wanted me to do my natural speaking voice, which obviously is one of the easiest gigs you can do when they don't want you sounding like Smeagol or Barney the dinosaur. So it was good. I mean, I liked the script. The pacing was also very natural. The interaction between some of the characters, or not so much as the interactions between Nancy and Dylan, which I thought was quite playful. But his knowledge of the other people. I don't think you ever see them interact with each other, do you? Dylan doesn't. The other characters, they don't kind of get together.
Nancy kind of recaps what's happened and talks about all the characters, but I don't really believe he talks to anybody else except Nancy. But it's interesting with Nancy in particular. Did you ever remember hearing about her in the UK when you were growing up? Like, what was her prominence there?
To be honest with you, I hadn't really heard of the series. I knew of the. I didn't even know the Hardy Boys. I just recognised it from something my grandmother had on her bookshelf at some point. But she might have had Nancy Drew ones on there too. But I don't know. So it was all new to me.
So it was like a blank slate for you when you kind of jumped into the game series. Like, how did you hear about the audition call? Because weren't you currently in the UK when that audition call came, or were you in the States for the game?
No. I was in England at the time. I'm friends with Lani, so she contacted me and she said, "I've got this audition I'd like you to do." She talked me through some of the lines. I had them recorded, sent them out, and Her Interactive liked it. I know it was down between me and another guy, and he was an American chap who was using his version of an English accent. And it was fun to do, and it was and the reason I got in contact with her was because I was acting at the time in England when I lived there. Just before I left, I was doing some acting on here and there and everywhere. And one chap on set once told me, he said, "Have you thought about getting into like the voiceover field?" And he meant, commercials and the business side of stuff.
I think, well, another thing that's interesting about the fact that they chose you is I think they worked on Skype with you, correct?
Yeah, she called in via Skype. And I was in a studio in Blackpool, and that's where I did it. It didn't take any longer than 2 hours. We had some problems as well with the call, and the engineer was having problems rigging the call through and recording at the same time. But it didn't take that long. And then once we'd started recording, it was around 2 hours. So it was no biggie. And it was the place I was using anyway for my band at the time that I was singing with. So I already knew the studio.
Like halfway through the game, your poor character is out of commission. Like, were you kind of surprised when you came to that point?
No, not really. I never get surprised. I'm usually one of those annoying guys that you're next to in the cinema, and he's worked out the entire plot without realizing what's happened. So, no, I mean, it was a crime mystery kind of video game, so I wasn't really that surprised. And I think it was more surprised the way that I had to deliver the initial catalyst to my bedridden telephone conversation state. I won't give away too much, but kind of had to cover my mouth and pretend I was behind a wall, like, help me. I always try to have fun. I think that's one of the key things. Whenever someone says to me, I'm not like a super famous voice actor or whatever, but I do get the odd occasional question. They say, "Well, what works?" And I say, "Well, first of all, get some acting experience. That usually helps. Secondly, just be a pleasant person. Be yourself. Don't try to be something that you're not, because that leads to a very bitter and kind of negative kind of individual." So I always get jobs that come through, and I usually take them because people want to work with me because they hear that I'm easygoing, and I'll do other takes if I have to. Just be cool, just be a good guy, or good person rather. Most of the time, I'm delivering lines solo to other than a voice director or a writer being in on the recording, where they're just saying, "Oh, we want you to react this way," or "This is going on at the moment," and just imagine blah 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 blah. But I think this was the only time where I had the other actor delivering their lines as their character for me to be able to get into the situation, which was good. It's preferable, but it doesn't happen all the time. We do have fun with the sessions, which I think is important. I never have a bad experience with it, but I can understand how some may not like certain rewrites, or they might not like the fact that they'll have to wait an extra 20 minutes whilst the writer goes off to change some scene. It's not worth the anger. It's not worth the stress. It's not worth the anger. I mean, working with creative types is always an interesting experience, especially if you're a creative type yourself, which you should be if you're doing voice, if you're acting at all. But I always find the process to be very fascinating. So even if they do have to disappear and rewrite, I'd like to know the reason. I'd like to hear or be in the moment when that's happening. It's like, all right, they've suddenly did come up with this whole new idea whilst I've been on the call with them. This is great.
And a lot of improv has to go into that. So do you mind if we ask Dylan a couple questions?
No, I don't mind.
Okay, perfect. So welcome everyone to our questionnaire segment of the show, of the podcast. I'd like to welcome Dylan Carter, known as one of the worldwide's best tour guides that we have ever known. Dylan, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me here. I certainly like hearing titles of my own.
What is one of the most exciting places you've ever been to while you were actually giving a tour?
One of the most exciting places. Okay. Um, I would possibly have to say there was a quirky Halloween skit that I did once over in Paris, and everyone who turned up decided to come in character. So, giving my tour, which I planned meticulously, I have to say it was very difficult when dealing with Jack the Ripper or Frankenstein's monster and a couple of witches, I think, whose noses fell off often, which holding a straight face, it's very difficult. But I remained strong. I did my job and I did my duty, and it was quite unnerving in some places because Paris can be very dark and very scary, especially when you're doing a Halloween event. But I mean that was quite good. Other than the historical ones, the tombs were quite harrowing, and that one never actually got off the ground for particular reasons, which I don't really want to go into right now. Any other questions?
Oh, sure, of course, yes, absolutely. Well, are you feeling better though? Because I did hear that that the curse was something that you had to come up against, and you were almost like Indiana Jones against that curse. And unfortunately, it had you out for a little bit of the tour guiding business while you took a break. But everything's okay, right?
It is, and in pure Indiana Jones style, I managed to rescue my hat. So it's everything. My leg may have not made it, but my hat did.
Since you say that you like to plan for your tours, you don't, go out on a whim and just go ahead and do something and make up things. So how long does it take you to plan a tour, especially some place that you've never been before, but you kind of arrive there and you want to get the experience of it?
Well, using the internet is obviously a very wise choice, depending on where you get your information from. So, but other than that, it only takes about let's see. And with all the planning and the trying to plan for the questions that could come up and the answers I would have to give and the phone numbers I would have to swap out. Well, let's see. About 20 minutes.
Well, what's your favorite dish that you have gotten a chance to eat due to all of your wonderful tours from around the world?
I think one of the most surprising ones I had, there was a cow's stomach in a black bean sauce, which took me by surprise because I really didn't think I'd like it. It's kind of like a chewy squid, but a cow's stomach.
With all your tours, you're going around the world and you're learning about historic figures. Out of all the historic figures that you kind of know about, who in particular is one of your favorites? And who would you have loved to have met to just, strike up a chat and learn from them?
Possibly Thomas Cook, or let's have a look. I've always had a fascination with with rogues, or the ones who kind of borderline across what's legal. I suppose it's kind of like the dangerous lifestyle. Kind of appeals to me, especially after my time in Egypt. But anything to do with like the old tales of Robin Hood or pirates, not necessarily from the Caribbean. That's quite, yeah.
Well, where is the Dylan Carter off to next? Where can our listeners find you as a tour guide? Because I'm sure a lot of them are going to want to take one of your tours, one of your legendary tours.
Well, my next one is I'm planning a trip to sort of the Transylvanian areas. Vlad the Impaler has a very kind of bloody history, and of course that has a spin-off effect for all these things, the Draculas, and it's a very kind of robust area, and the people there are also very, very colourful and very interesting. And I often try to promote people to go to places that are a little off the beaten track. So, I mean, you got your Ibizas and you have your Canary Islands and you have this and that and everywhere else. But I think Transylvania is that sort of area that it has a certain appeal. So I might find a Van Helsing outfit and sort of
Well, it already has a reputation, so I wouldn't be surprised if, everybody goes there and is dressed up already as a vampire. But yeah, I think its reputation precedes it.
It does, and I'm going to have a nice little joke, I think, as well. I'm going to take a dry, vacuum-sealed slice of steak, and then everyone's brought their steaks, pull mine out.
No, you need to bring onions.
Oh.
No
I might do
steak,
that.
onions.
But I wouldn't like my customers to cry. Yes. So if there are any vampires or undead listening to this and they want to partake in my tour, then by all means get in contact with me.
Well, good luck with that, Dylan. I hope everything goes well, and maybe Nancy might see you again at some point, because she's never actually been up there into Transylvania, that section, or that area before. So that would be interesting if she runs into you again.
She has yet to put her dainty little feet into such soil, and I would gladly be there to welcome her with open arms and my hat.
And scene. Have you been on a lot of tours before yourself personally, Gabriel? Because, like, honestly, I feel that a lot of people might have had a tour guide experience, kind of like Dylan before, where there's somebody who says certain things and they're not exactly right.
No, I don't know. I mean, I think I went to one when I was in school. That was a long time ago. And the only other tour I took was when I lived out in Berlin, but that was on a ferry. So it wasn't really a tour guided tour. It was more of like we were on the river, and it was just looking at the architecture of the buildings along that river lane around Berlin. So no, I can't honestly say I have.
Would you consider being a tour guide? Like, if you could pick any location or a specific castle or a specific mansion or anything like that, what would you pick in particular?
I wouldn't mind. I'm the kind of guy. I've traveled a lot, and I'm more the kind of person who I don't plan. I don't plan for anything. So as it comes to traveling, I'm more the kind of person that would point on the map and go, I'm going to go there, and just do it.
Are you doing any current voiceovers, or is there anything in the future that we can keep an eye out for?
Oh, the only thing that's happening at the moment, I'm a terrible person to work for, as in self-employed. I'm not very good at it at all. I usually get word of mouth stuff come through to me. But at the moment, I'm working on a video game called Enderroll, which is based off of Skyrim. It's a mod, basically, but it's a game in itself. It's definitely worth checking out. It's free, doesn't cost anything. It's done by a company called Shore AI, and they're based in Germany. And it's very good. It's the story. If you like fantasy, and obviously if you like the whole Skyrim thing, it's worth checking out. And again, it's free, so you can't really sort of be negative about it.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I have one more question for you, which is if you could describe your experience working with Her Interactive and being a part of the Nancy Drew universe using one word, what would that be?
Exciting.